Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Drew Davis. I'm a senior in the business school, and on my left is Emma Shaich, a junior in the business school, and we'll be co-moderators for the food and beverage and food delivery service panel. Thanks for sticking with us throughout the day. We've had an incredible lineup of discussions, and we're diving into one of the most dynamic and ever-evolving industries, the food, beverage, and food service industry. We're lucky to have three amazing panelists here to share their insights with regard to the changing policies and technologies of the food industry. So without further ado, let's get started.
So right next to Drew, we have Adam Eskin, who is the founder of DIG, a chef-driven restaurant group built on scratch cooking, sustainable sourcing, and ethical food systems. Since launching in 2011, Adam has expanded DIG to 30-plus locations across major U.S. cities, embedding farm partnerships, food waste reduction, and culinary training into the brand's DNA. Before launching DIG, Adam worked in private equity at Wexford Capital, specializing in consumer and restaurant investments, providing him a unique perspective on blending finance with hospitality. Adam continues to drive conversations on sustainability, responsible sourcing, and the future of food.
Awesome. Right here in the middle, we have Steve Salis, a serial entrepreneur and hospitality innovator, reshaping how modern consumers interact with brands. As the co-founder of And Pizza, he built a mission-driven, fast-casual pizza chain, pioneering brand activism and unique workplace culture initiatives like employee tribes and a living wage model. After leading And Pizza's expansion across multiple states, he exited the company in 2019. Steve then founded Salis Holdings, a hospitality and investment group dedicated to revitalizing iconic American brands like Ted's Bulletin, Federalist Pig, Sidekick Bakery, and Kramer Books. Steve's expertise spans hospitality, real estate, and brand strategy, redefining the future of experimental dining and retail.
And next to me, we have Larry Liu, who is transforming online grocery shopping as the founder and CEO of Weee, North America's largest and fastest growing Asian e-commerce grocer, valued at over $4 billion in 2022. Since launching in 2015, Weee has redefined ethnic grocery shopping through data-driven supply chain initiatives, ensuring fresh, hard-to-find international ingredients reach customers efficiently. His tech-driven approach has optimized inventory, reduced food waste, and streamlined logistics, setting a new standard in specialty grocery retail. Before Weee, Larry founded Happytail Inc., an e-commerce startup leveraging pricing algorithms for product arbitrage, and held key roles in R&D finance at Atmel Corporation. His work at the intersection of technology, supply chain efficiency, and cultural accessibility continues to reshape the industry. We're so excited to have you all here today. And without further ado, Drew will get us started with our first question.
Awesome. Thanks, Emma. So to begin, we'd love to ask each of you to briefly share an overview of your businesses, as well as explain the key factors as to their success. So we can start with you, Adam.
Great. Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it. So we're DIG. We're a 30-plus fast casual restaurant brand. We actually have one location pretty close to here out in Wisconsin. If you've had the opportunity to dine, I think we brought some food in this afternoon.
Yeah, thanks for lunch.
I hope you enjoyed it. Pleasure. So I think what we've focused on historically and what's made us special is maybe somewhat antithetical to a lot of what's going on in the world today in terms of technology and automation, which is we always fundamentally believed in good food, and that meant for us where it came from and how it was prepared. So we invested pretty heavily in our supply chain. We invested pretty heavily in our training and our labor model, putting chefs at the forefront of the restaurants. And each year it just felt like the number one priority was continue to make the food tastier, better, more sustainable, more satiating. And so we did that for well over a decade, and it seems to have worked for us.
Awesome. Steve?
I'm up. You guys did such a great job introducing me. I don't know if I could do a better job introducing myself, but I'll try my best. Thanks for having me, by the way. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for being here.
Steve Salis, and I founded, as mentioned, a company called And Pizza, built it from a piece of paper to a 55-unit business for which I exited in 2019. At that time, I set up my own diversified holding company focusing on alternative investing. Most of our investments are in the restaurant and consumer industry, real estate. We have some non-core businesses, operating businesses, that is, venture. And we have blank check companies. I'm also the CEO of a company called Catalog, and the whole idea around Catalog is we put together a bunch of operating companies in the food space, and really the platform is focused on food and food-adjacent businesses, really focusing on premium brands and premium intellectual property. and we're actually setting that up to become a modern consolidator within the space. In regards to sort of principles that have been really important in my career to date, one of the things I focus heavily on is delivering something that's called premium and approachability. So really focusing on delivering the best possible experiences and products that I possibly can to the guests at the best value propositions we can. Another thing that we focus our efforts on is delivering extraordinary experiences to those guests. The other thing is that we have a saying in-house that yesterday's wins don't entitle us to today's successes, so we have to earn it every day. We focus very diligently on trying to win the day. Whatever happens that day is that day, and the next day you got to go out and you got to earn it again. And those are a couple of principles that I stand by.
Great. And Larry?
Yep. I'm Larry. Nice to meet everyone. Thanks for having me. So our business, we focus on serving the underserved communities, their food needs. It was pretty hard to imagine for most people that Americans can be underserved on their food needs. But our company is actually a result of a mega trend in this country, which is the whole demographic shift. Americans are getting more and more diverse, and the mainstream grocery retailers actually could not serve the very diverse food needs of for example, the different Asian ethnicities or different Latino ethnicities. So we saw that opportunity, and we started Weee 10 years ago. So now the business is growing to about $1 billion in sales and growing at 40 to 50% year over year. I would say the reason that we can do what we do is because nobody is really focusing on this segment, and they have the structural deficiencies to solve this problem. But we came up with the better model.
Thank you, guys. So Drew kind of asked you to discuss your successes, if you will, but we know that every business does face challenges. So we would love it if you could discuss a significant disappointment or failure that you've experienced in your company, how you've dealt with it, and what stands out to you now about the experience in hindsight. If anybody wants to go
Adam, you want to
first.
start again?
Sure.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, how long do you have? That could take a while, but when I think about maybe lessons learned from entrepreneurs that this group, when they think about their careers, could benefit from, it's a derivative of our particular experience with COVID. So we had units in 3 urban markets: New York, Boston, Philadelphia, and the majority of our business was office lunch business. And so when the pandemic hit, we were, I think, unusually poorly positioned. And so I think about lessons learned. There's sort of business 101, concentration risk. There's lots of things, but for me, hearkening back on that time, we were not prepared for the moment when everything was no longer going up and to the right. And when you're in these markets, when capital is available, when interest rates are low, when you ride sort of you catch maybe a Charlie Mungerish wave and things continue to move in the right direction, it's hard to take a step back and say, what would it look like, or what would it take for this thing to crash or to break, whether it's Chipotle going through their food safety crisis or what have you. And so in terms of big lessons learned, were I to build a company again, I think one of the things I'd be thinking a lot more about is how do I prepare the company and the business for a world in which we don't expect things and things are not necessarily just going like this.
Interesting.
So I think if given the opportunity, I could provide a lecture on how to waste money as an entrepreneur and how to make money as an entrepreneur. Perhaps you'll have me back to do that. But I kind of look at things from the standpoint of I think you have to lose in order to learn how to win. I don't really look at things in success and in failure. I look at everything as a learning experience. I think that all these experiences develop stripes, and they provide you with perspective and an opportunity to get better. And I've had a lot of really wonderful experiences. I dropped out of college. I moved to New York City. I had to learn the ins and outs of the food and beverage industry and just life, doing things. And so, I really focus on that. I try not to get too high when things are great. I try not to get too low when things aren't great. Everyone's going through crap. I mean, the reality is, we all eat a lot of crap, and you have to be willing to eat a lot of crap to be successful. And I've learned how to eat a lot of crap, and I'm okay with it, I guess, within reason. You just got to keep going. Part of this is an endurance game, right? So, like, for me, it's like, when I think about the most important attributes in entrepreneurship, one of the things, and there's a lot, right? I mean, there's grit and there's tenacity, and there's a million things, but I think the most important thing is endurance. You got to have endurance. You got to be able to out-endure your competition, and you got to be able to just focus on putting one foot in front of the other. And if you do that, you have the highest propensity to win. And that's what we're all here to do, right? You're doing this with the opportunity of trying to win, but you can't unless you learn how to lose in order for you to learn how to win. You'll appreciate it much more as a result.
And for me, it took us 3 years to get the models right. We had the wrong model in the beginning. I think one thing I learned in the process is I was doing corporate finance for 6 years before I started Weee. So I built a habit that I always try to have a mental map and try to forecast the outcome. So whenever the actual and outcome did not match, I knew that it was my opportunity to go back, revise my mental map, so I can always arrive at a more closer to reality mental model for the business. So first 3 years, I was horribly wrong, in some of the forecasts, but it really, all those thinking and every time the comparison between the mental model and reality actually led us to find the correct model. So now I really encourage all the business leaders in our company to always try to forecast and try to compare your forecast to the actuals, so you can learn in that process.
Very interesting. It was cool to hear about some of the struggles and some of the challenges you faced. One that the U.S. Department of Agriculture predicts is that food will increase by approximately 2.2% in price over the year 2025. When a significant portion of your product's identity is tied to premium ingredients, which are usually more expensive, how do you decide when and by how much to pass these costs onto the consumer without compromising loyalty or frequency? Whoever wants to start.
I'm happy to start.
Yeah.
We try our damnedest never pass $1 to our guest. We take the relationship with our guests very seriously. At the end of the day, they're the boss.
Right.
And, we have a duty to deliver. People choose to spend money with us. They're not mandated to spend money with us. And so, we take the responsibility very seriously as it pertains to how to think about price. We're known, as I mentioned earlier, to delivering premium and approachable experiences. We try our best to deliver a lot of value at the highest quality we possibly can. We will try to engineer every which way we possibly can in the P&L to not pass the dollar. Of course, the last bit of time, we've seen a lot of headwinds. Mm-hmm. And so, inflationary interest rates, et cetera. And so, we've had to take some price to stay competitive. But, like right now, we're dealing with a major egg issue, right? With the bird flu and stuff. We're one of the largest buyers of eggs in the area, right? I mean, we buy millions of dollars in eggs. And, we've been forced to really sort of have to think about how to manage that. I mean, you can't even get eggs in the grocery store or anywhere. So what we decided to do is we implemented a surcharge. That was very challenging to do. But, when I looked at what was going on out there and I talked to some of our guests, at the end of the day, I realized that this was the right thing to do. And the reason we didn't just take price in order, because, people take price, oh, we'll take it down. You never take it down, right? I mean, but the thing with a surcharge is you can take it away. And the whole impetus around it was, let's put something in place managing this situation, we all hope, is only an interim situation. Of course, we don't know. And if and when we get back to a place of a normalized state, which, of course, what does that mean anymore? But, then we'll look to take it away. But we try really hard to not pass dollars off to our guests. We do everything we can in our P&L to try to manage the hell out of it without compromising the experience, the user experience, and the product by which we want to deliver to our guest.
Mm-hmm. Larry, I can imagine with the grocery store business especially, a lot of imports coming in and proposed tariffs might cause prices to increase for those different products. So how are you planning to deal with those challenges that are to come?
Yeah, we have seen a lot of volatility in pricing in the past 5 years. 2018, 2019, the first wave of China tariff, like 25%. And then COVID, the whole supply chain, for example, ocean container to ship one container from Asia to California used to be like $1,000. And it went up to like $20,000 per container. And then it dropped back down. So we have seen a lot of volatility. So we learned to actually focus on things we can control rather than pay too much attention on things we cannot control. So we try to really run our warehouse operations, logistic operations more efficiently and use technology to really improve the whole supply chain efficiency. So the short answer is we don't really think too much about how much to pass to consumer or not. We try to do the things we can control better, so we can provide value to the customers.
Great.
Okay, well, kind of on that note, consumer awareness around health and wellness is at an all-time high, driven by both shifting preferences and regulatory changes. We're seeing this through increased scrutiny on ingredients from the recent ban on red number 3 to growing concerns over ultra-processed foods. Meanwhile, policy shifts, such as the appointment of a new head of health and human services, as well as the U.S. Surgeon General's recent warning on alcohol as a carcinogen, are pushing the industry toward a greater transparency and reform. Given these shifts, how are you adapting your businesses to align with evolving customer expectations and regulatory changes?
My perspective on this is I think we've been sort of observing this gradual transition towards transparency and understanding where your food comes from. It's a big part of our business model and sort of how we started out. When we first got started looking back, those were the early days of people getting accustomed to nutritional labels and actually asking questions. And that was in the sort of 06s, 07s, 08s. And so I think on the margin, these changes, we don't anticipate they'll impact our business that much. I mean, we're only 30 some odd units. We're not necessarily mature yet. But a big part of the fundamentals of what we do, sweet potatoes, broccoli, mac and cheese, they're going to remain intact.
And before we move on, I just wanted to ask you, so I know Dig does some vertical integration with farms. Can you touch a little bit more on top of that?
Yeah, it's always just been it's one of the two pillars that we focused on as a brand. And because our menu is so vegetable forward and our particular business model, though we serve things in a bowl, it's less salad-ish and sort of chopped up things and more sort of whole ingredients and dishes that are sort of intimately prepared. And so because a broccoli or a cauliflower or a sweet potato tends to sort of be the star of the show depending on the dish, who you buy it from and how you think about it and how you think about it impacts the local community and all those things are just very important to us. And so it's been one of the two core things that we've cared about since day one. We spent a bunch of time leading up to COVID really getting into agriculture. We operated our own farm, which 5 years into it became a certified organic farm in upstate New York. So we did a bunch of work around it. And at this point, I think it's just become sort of woven into the DNA of the company.
Awesome.
In regards to alcohol, because we have businesses that sell alcohol,
Right.
It's very fascinating because when he put out this warning, I believe it was towards the end of last year, and what's interesting is, historically, January and February, people go dry. They have resolutions, right? And so just generally, there's resolutions that take place. So we're kind of monitoring that very closely, right? We haven't seen really a drop-off in the consumption of alcohol vis-a-vis any other previous years as a result of these warnings that have come out. That being said, you're also seeing trends with the younger cohort, the Gen Z cohort, where clearly alcohol doesn't seem to be, at the moment, a very sticky thing for them to consume. And so I think it provides an opportunity for us to innovate, whether it's through mocktails or other various ways that we can. And so we've introduced mocktails and things like that have been actually really successful. And, it's sometimes, things like that come out are highly sensationalized, right? And so you don't really know what's a fad, what's a fixture. And, you got to try to depict those things. You don't want to make the wrong decision and jump on something that might be, great for a moment, but doesn't have sort of long-term enduring systemic change that comes with that. And so I think you just got to try to figure out the best way of doing it. But the mocktails have been, as an example, a really wonderful way for us to introduce a new product line as a result of seeing, a seismic change in that cohort as they're obviously getting older, and you're trying to figure out how to appease to that constituency.
Awesome. Well, Sweetgreen, a pretty well-known Georgetown backed fast casual competitor, is doubling down on its automation to cut labor costs and boost efficiency. It positions robotics as a key part to its future. Adam, Steve, and Larry, I know we talked about this a little bit in the back room, but how are you incorporating automation into your own operations, and what impact do you see this having on fast casual and food service industries?
I can start. So this is certainly something that we're focused on. I think with restaurants historically, there's been just a bit of a longer adoption curve around technology. I think the industry is finally catching up in a bunch of ways. I think the first step towards automation, and I think we can imagine a world, if anybody has been in a Waymo recently, where things are going to be pretty meaningfully automated across all facets of our lives. But I think there's likely going to be several steps to get there. So one of the ways we think about it is implementing technology inside the four walls that lowers decision fatigue, sort of automates decision making, makes things easier to get done, and is in support of the human beings that are doing the work, more so than necessarily displacing the humans. So I think there's going to be many years for this to sort of work its way through the system. I do think it's quite possible that a lot more of our food in quick service environments does get automated, but I think it's going to take us some time to get there.
Interesting.
And what I would say is, because we have flex casual, full service, and what have you, is that, speaking more specifically in full, full has other inherent layers, right, to run those businesses. I think you also have a lot of elasticity in those businesses that fast casual businesses don't have, right? I think like anything, it's all about trying to ascertain how to create the most frictionless experience, and then how to reallocate capital into investing in things that matter. I don't think that like automation, robotics, are going to necessarily, they're going to displace certain positions, and I think that can be really good. But for me, when that happens, I'm going to be looking at how to reinvest in positions that really touch the guests, right? Because I think that's an opportunity to do that. And so I think like anything else, we're trying to figure out the best ways of implementing as it makes sense. Sometimes, you don't want to disrupt the apple cart either, right? So I think you really got to feel good about it. You got to test and react. You got to innovate where you can, and then know where not to innovate. And maybe wait to sort of see what else comes out to determine what you want to do. But I think there's a lot going on around it. But like anything else, you just got to, I think, try to figure out how to best implement, how to best create the most frictionless experience, and use it as an opportunity to get better along the way. Because having a lot of technology doesn't make your business necessarily better. I mean, if you don't know how to use it, you don't know how to implement it. Your people don't know how to, we were talking about AI in the back. I mean, we'll probably get to that in a moment. But, like AI is great. It sounds awesome. It's like, we're in the first inning, the bottom of the first, but the home team is about to come to bat. It's still in its early stages, and there's a lot around it, and it's exciting. But you got to figure out how to best utilize these things, because they can be highly disruptive, and they could be imperative to, or they could be punitive, to your business.
I mean, just adding to that, do you want to go ahead? That, like an example of a pain point that I think will incrementally just alleviate the burden and make it easier to operate restaurants. One of the things that we found managers always struggle with, I don't know about you, Steve, but finding time to interview. Finding time to go online, look at resumes, shuffle through them, bring people in for interviews. And so we're using technology that is built on an AI stack that sort of automates that process. It's the first line of defense. It's an AI agent through SMS text, has a conversation with the individual that is applying to the role. And so you're sort of taking all of that initial work, compressing it, simplifying it, and then those individuals that sort of work through that text exchange, answer questions to the satisfaction of whatever the Brain criteria is, they make it through, they're automatically scheduled with a general manager who has a window on their calendar blocked for that week, and then a lot more people are coming through the door. So things like that, I think you can solve specific pain points without necessarily overhauling the entire business day one.
Great. If I may, so what we're using AI fairly robustly right now is in guest engagement. We had a revolving door of people that were managing our guest engagement. It's a pretty thankless, unfortunately, fairly thankless gig, because I think the old adage is people talk about great experiences and people write about not so great experiences. And so we introduced a platform called Bird Eye, and it's been It's been a really wonderful platform because we've been able to leverage artificial intelligence where you can aggregate the data, you can connect and speak to the various guests that want to be engaged with as a result of an experience, usually negative, sometimes positive, and really works for sort of through that recovery loop, right? And so that's been a great example of where I think so far, we've liked that investment, and we're going to continue to make more of them as it makes sense.
Awesome. And I'd love to hear from you, Larry, about AI and automation, robotics, because I know there's a ton to do with the food wholesale and delivery process to do with that, and so I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, my view is in the long run, it's going to be all automated, all the warehouses. So today we only have a couple automated warehouses. But I think it's a core competency. You don't learn how to run automated warehouses in very short period of time. So we start now. We can, say in 5 years' time, we already have 5 years of experience dealing with how to run those facilities. It's probably not going to be a huge competitive advantage because other people also do that. But if we don't do it, it's going to be a huge disadvantage. So that's our view. Something, if you look into the future for the next 10 years, if it's inevitable, you'd better start sooner than later. Yeah, that's our. On the AI side, the same thing, right? We're experimenting a lot of different things. The usual things like automated customer service. So now, like more than 80% of the refund is automated. And product discovery, you see Amazon did some interesting things on the product discovery side. Demand planning. We really see AI everywhere now, and we have to be good at it.
Awesome.
Well, Adam, you kind of touched on this a little bit already, but Charlie Munger, the former vice chairman of Berkshire Hathaway, advocated for the circle of competency, the idea that a company must identify, cultivate, and remain within the circle of its expertise, and strive to be the best player within the niche market. So DIG has evolved from a niche chain serving bodybuilders, actually, to a farm-to-table fast casual brand with 30 plus locations. That's just how it started with 5 locations. And Weee has pivoted from a local delivery service to a $4 billion online ethnic grocery leader. Steve, you've expanded from food into real estate, even leveraging aerospace robotics to build homes in DC. So how have you all considered venturing beyond and remaining within your core competencies, and what has influenced these choices?
What I would add to this part of the conversation.
Pomp, you gotta go.
No, that brought me way back. I appreciate that, though. Look, I think it just depends on the phase in the life cycle of the company. I think it's pretty common. Larry, you mentioned as well. You're sort of working through. You're iterating towards product market fit, and I think it's a little bit of art and a little bit of science to sort of understand the moment at which it makes more sense for you to stop innovating and to start simplifying, and vice versa. And so I think we were probably a bit heavier in the early days on the innovating side, and it led to a lot of our success. I think we were probably a little bit slow to wake up and realize that we had a thing, and that a lot of the other things that were around the edges, we could shed, focus a bit more on just doing the one thing we did well and doing it repeatedly over and over and over again. And so I think just having an awareness for where you are on that curve or through what phase you're in, and how to balance those two things. It's a hard thing, and knowing what I know now, I'd probably do a few things differently. But until you go through it, it's you're trying to do your best to balance the two sides.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think product market fit is never permanent. When you have a product market fit in a niche, doesn't mean you have a product market fit for a broader market. For example, in the very beginning, we were only serving Chinese immigrants, right? Mm-hmm. It's a much smaller population, probably 2-3 million people. However, from serving the Chinese immigrant, we distilled some essence. We learned some core lessons. The reason we could serve them is because they're underserved. Then we try to figure out, okay, what other people are also underserved. Then we realize, the Vietnamese people, the Filipino, Indians, they're all the same. They face exactly the same problem as the Chinese, right? So by expanding to adjacent ethnicities, we were able to 5x the TAM. Mm-hmm. But we're basically doing similar things. So now we're also going to expand to the Latino ethnicities, then again, you 3x the TAM again. But basically, we're solving the same problem because if you are a Puerto Rican, you can find offline Puerto Rican supermarket that easily, and Safeway or Kroger won't care. They wouldn't add 2,000 products for Puerto Ricans. So we're basically solving exactly the same problems. So I think expanding to bigger TAM, you just need to be careful that are you really applying your core competencies? Are you really the best in the industry to solve this problem?
Steve, I know this is F&B, but would you talk a little bit about your real estate and?
Sure. Yeah, so, starting out as a merchant, which I got into the business as a merchant, I had the bug to get in the real estate industry as a result of being a merchant. I had a right of first refusal on one of my first buildings that I was a merchant in, and I ended up buying it, and then had the bug to continue to buy. And fast forward today, I have a full operating team that manages all of our real estate, or my real estate holdings. You focus a lot on covered land, owner-occupier stuff, PropCo, OpCo opportunities. There's a lot of adjacencies and ways that you can sort of juice rate of returns, and both on the retail side as well on the PropCo side. So, I've enjoyed it. I think most things I've gotten into are tangential or peripheral. I think I've been fairly comfortable with that, but I try to go in eyes wide open and be judicious and cautious about how I enter, and really make sure that I'm getting a fairly good handle as to what we're doing. But my focus is in consumer, and I think that consumer principles can transcend beyond food. And I think a lot of companies are consumer companies. They don't really realize they are consumer companies. They talk to people. And so, I'm trying to ascertain how that all works, but my focus right now is really on catalog and on my daily sort of affairs, because I think that there's a pretty seismic opportunity to be a strategic consolidator of choice in the market. We're seeing a lot of opportunities for companies, and I think that the timing, well, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. The new issuance market's been challenging. The M&A market's been fairly quiet for the last 3 years. I'd like to think it's going to pick up at some point. I don't think that it's going to, people want to hibernate for too much longer, but we'll see. I think that the macro conditions will predicate some of that, and obviously the last month has been pretty loud and dynamic. So we'll see. We'll see how it's going to go.
Awesome. Well, you all brought up some great points. Adam, I do want to hone in on one thing you said. You said you were initially doing innovation, and then you eventually pivoted to a more scale and simplify strategy. Was there, each of you has successfully scaled, a numerous amount of businesses. Were there defining points where you knew there was a point in time that you should shift from that innovation to that scale and to the simplification of your business model? Or was that more of like a fluid, ongoing thing?
I think it's more fluid. I think it's a function of when you're in a brick and mortar business and you're managing a large fleet and operating a large fleet of physical assets that have geographic span and large teams. The complexity associated with business and trying to understand how much complexity you can have or can strip out in terms of the growth of that business is pretty important. And so as we expanded beyond the New York core, first going to Boston, Philadelphia, down into the DMV, whether it was supply chain and how we manage logistics, starting from, this large facility that we had in the Bronx, adjacent to Hunts Point, where all the vegetables came in, doing a lot of our own production, making a lot of our sauces. We ran a fleet of our own trucks. We're doing a lot of the heavy lifting ourselves. Over time, you have to figure out as you scale geographically how to bring partners in to facilitate some of those things.
I think it's, I think there's a touch and go element to it. I think there's a definable set of principles you can't waver from. I think everything else is a bit touch and go. One of the things that I realized, I started my first business when I was 25, and pizza, 26. And, I learned a lot about a lot. I always say I stubbed my toe, but I thankfully didn't break my foot. When you look at the maturation process of these growth companies, what you don't realize early on is the quality of the talent by which you need to get something off the ground. As you further professionalize your organization, how quickly you need to turn over. We would have people in the business that were very comfortable wearing 6 hats, and they were great, and they would go wide as all hell, but they would not go deep. But that was okay. You didn't need them to go deep. You didn't need them to be specialists. You need them to be generalists, because you're trying to maximize your dollars and you're trying to get the most out of your people. And then when you get to a certain level, and I don't want to use like a revenue number or anything, but when you start to sort of really amplified the J curve, you realize that your needs continue to evolve. And so the person that is wearing the 6 hats, that was instrumental in getting off the ground, say, hey, I need you to wear 3 hats now. And they're like, yeah, I don't wear 3 hats. Well, I wear 6. And it's like, well, it's not going to really work. And so, you don't realize when you're going through the maturation process how quickly you got to really sort of ascertain your talent. You got to determine, how they're going to be best served in the organization. And when you're growing quickly, those things are living, breathing organisms. And, you got to be really careful because you're balancing the fragility of your culture. You're balancing the fragility of, operational, success. And you try to do that while you're plugging in. I always say, like, we would bring in people from larger companies. And what I learned really quickly was the difference between someone that was a product of the system versus someone that created the system. They're different people. Okay, they're different people. We bring someone in from Qdoba, Potbelly, this thing, that thing. They were great. We had the CMO of Qdoba. He was fantastic, except that when you brought him into an 8-unit business, it was challenging for him because, he didn't have a department with 25 people and the whole nines. He had a department of 2. And, and you needed him to be scrappy and other various things which were more challenging. And so I learned very quickly that, there's a big difference between the person that creates the process versus is a product of creates the system versus being a product of the system. And they're 2 very different things. And something that, I was fortunate to learn at a young age. So.
My view is your business model has to work. If your unit economics doesn't work, if your business model is fundamentally broken, don't scale. Right? If it doesn't work in one city, it wouldn't work in 20 cities. So once the business model works, unit economic works, then it depends on the industry. If the industry is a winner-take-all industry, then you have to grow as fast as you can. Otherwise, the other guy who is growing faster will crush you. If the nature is not that, then I think a mentor of mine once told me you should grow at the slowest adequate speed. So if you don't grow, employees get impatient and investors get impatient. But if you grow too fast, right, you could break things. And yeah.
One of the things I was saying to Larry inside is that my companies today I don't have any investors. At some point we will bring them in. And one of it's about taking the risk to create a sizable organization, because when you do venture deals, right? I mean, a lot of the economics are given at seed and Series A, and before you know it, right, there's not a lot of economics for the founders, depending on if you're CEO or just a passive co-founder or whatever. And you learn a discipline, and the discipline is, when I built and everyone was okay with it. It was a different time, but you grow at all expense, get a definable unit economic model, right? Make sure that thing is working. And grow your G&A. At some point, you're going to hit an inflection point, you would think, where you're going to turn the pendulum. Reality is nothing happens on time. Nothing happens on budget. That's about the only guarantee you have in our business. So that model, if you have a ton of cash, I guess it's okay. I subscribe to a different discipline today, which is, we're all about creating EBITDA, real EBITDA, and using our cash flows to finance the growth through debt, cash flow, and whatever capital I've put into the business, get to a certain size. And then pick the right situation. Like I know now, as a result of having those experiences, what I want. And I'm willing to, put real skin up for that to happen, which is buying these companies, putting them together, getting scale. And then soon, frankly, real soon, we will then put, the right financing package together to go out and put a little bit more gasoline, as we like to say, on the business. But, it's just a different philosophy. It's a different time now, than it was. A lot of these public companies, they don't want companies burning a lot of cash. They want EBITDA and they want cash flow, and so it's different than it was back in 2010 and 12 and 14 and what have you. And look, there's different strategies for different people. If you have, a group of investors that are okay with it, then fine. If you're going and you're going to get to the place, it's totally good. But there's another side to it too. Yeah. And there's a good discipline that comes with that too.
Well, I think we're almost out of time, so we are going to go into some fun rapid fire questions to end the day off strong. Okay, so if you could each distill your brand into one word, what what would it be? And like, what is it that you're selling to the customer when they take that first bite?
I want them to feel satisfied.
Delicious.
Authenticity.
What is your favorite kitchen utensil?
Nothing beats using I have a really nice chef knife and just standing at the counter, and there's something very cathartic about it.
Well, first off, you don't want me making toast. I'm going to burn your house down. So you don't want me in your kitchens, but I don't know, a spork.
Perfect.
Chopsticks.
Okay, and our last
Multitask.
one, what's your death row meal? And you can't plug your own restaurants.
What is it? I'm sorry, what's the
What's your death row meal?
death row?
Or your last supper?
I would leave death row and pull up a stool at Corner Bistro and have a burger and a Guinness.
Yeah, I got to go with a burger and a milkshake. It's my kryptonite's milkshakes.
Dumplings.
Love it.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys so much.
Thank you. You guys did amazing.
Great job. Both of
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.